Providing important and interesting product knowledge is one of our key focuses at the CMA. That is why we have partnered with the Good Housekeeping Institute for a series of podcasts. GHI is driven by the same mission of providing vital information to make good buying decisions. GHI focuses on the testing and science behind housewares products, reinforcing safety and regulations. In this podcast, we learn about a unique but important item in any housewares assortment or kitchen, the Dutch oven. Come listen to what GHI teaches us about this historic and interesting shape. It takes all shapes and sizes to make a complete cookware collection. There are wonderful stories of chefs from around the world who collect pieces from independent shops to garage sales, because it's all about the perfect piece for the perfect dish. Every design line, dimension, and feature adding to the beauty and functionality of the piece. Do you know there are differences between a sauté pan, a fry pan, a skillet, and a crepe pan? They may all look the same, but there's subtle differences that make them unique. There is so much history behind every shape of cookware. Today, we explore the Dutch oven, one of the most versatile pieces. It has a unique story to share. Welcome. My name is Fran Grossbeck, and you're listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Today, we are super excited to have Nicole Papantonio, Deputy Director of Kitchen Appliances and Technology Lab at the Good Housekeeping Institute. In this podcast, we will explore all the great information about Dutch ovens, shopping and cooking tips, and what is and how to use a Dutch oven. You can find out more about the Good Housekeeping Institute at goodhousekeeping.com and about the CMA at cookware.org. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad to have you back. We've done a couple now together, and these have been fantastic.
I agree. So much fun to talk about, a fun topic.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us again today. And before we jump into the story of the Dutch oven, do you have any interesting stories of your time working at GHI that you could share with us?
There's so many. One of the best parts is being able to talk directly to the manufacturers of these brands. And something that actually stood out recently was getting to talk to the PR team over at Stove and just learning about the history and what goes into it and how they were designed, and so many little details that people would probably find boring or mundane, but it's so interesting to me. And it really does help us test these products better because we just have more knowledge.
I totally agree. And so many of these brands have been around a really long time, and some people don't realize the history behind them. It's really just incredible. Well, understanding your expertise and background from us talking before, this article is really interesting because I think the Dutch oven is the unsung hero of the cookware collection. So why did you choose to do a whole article about it?
There are a lot of people searching for Dutch ovens and they want to know what to buy. And now there are a lot more different sizes. There are a lot more different shapes. They come in all different colors. They're also expensive. So people have questions about what should I even be looking for when I buy them. So we basically listen to what people are looking for and try to answer all those questions. And especially Dutch ovens, you'll likely have them for a really long time. So you probably want to know everything you can before buying one.
I totally, and it's interesting. I believe the Dutch oven was the first multi-use piece before multi-use became a buzzword, because you can use a Dutch oven on your stove, in your oven. There's so many components, which also makes it one to pay more attention to when you're developing it or designing a piece, because it has to go oven and stove and and to table sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So with a name like Dutch oven, a lot of newer chefs could be confused about what this product is. So can you explain exactly what a Dutch oven is?
Sure. So the name actually, something I learned recently, the history of Dutch ovens, they were called Dutch ovens based off of the material that they were made. Originally it was cast iron, and then they started to become enameled. And those were considered French ovens, but then so many people were still looking for Dutch ovens. So now the category covers both your Dutch ovens and your French ovens. So a Dutch oven is basically a really heavy duty pot, and the bottom is pretty wide so it could sear well. And then the ones that I found have shorter sides than, let's say, your stock pot does. So this way, again, you get better browning, better searing. It's not going to steam as much, and it's thick. And you want that to be thick because it retains heat well. And what that means to the normal person is they can use it basically as like a slow cooker in the oven or on their stovetop, and they don't have to worry about adjusting the temperature many times. So usually wide bottoms, shorter sides, heavy duty, and then a matching lid that'll also keep all that heat and moisture inside the pot.
That's really interesting because slow cooking in the oven has become an important way to cook. We're even seeing bakeware transition into that kind of use. So, wow, it really makes you think that the Dutch oven has been kind of overlooked and it is a really important piece. So when you're shopping for a Dutch oven, what should you be looking for? And are there substitutes?
So the main thing I would look at is shape and size. That's the first thing I would touch upon. How many people are you cooking for and how will you use it most often? So one size that's really popular is that 5.5 quart or 6 quart size. And that's kind of your overall piece that you could use for making soups. You could use it for making stews. You could make it for chilies. You could use it for a family, but also if you're just going to invest in one piece, that's the size I would start off with just because it is so versatile. And then in terms of substitutes, they're usually made out of cast iron, but now you can actually find Dutch ovens that are made out of different materials like stainless steel and sometimes ceramic or different non-stick. So the shape is there, but the weight and the heft isn't, which just make it easier for people to use that don't have the strength to move it around or store it.
That is a really great point. And it's one of the items that's typically included in sets here in the US. Knowing all this information really helps you understand the use of the piece. This is really interesting. I'm going to take a pause here real quick to remind everyone that you are listening to the What's Cooking podcast from the Cookware Manufacturers Association with special guest Nicole Papantonio from the Good Housekeeping Institute, sharing insights on what a Dutch oven is and how to use one. This has been really interesting. And you can learn more about Good Housekeeping Institute on their website, goodhousekeeping.com. And you can learn more about the CMA from our website, cookware.org. So let's get back to the podcast. Everyone loves a piece of cookware that can function for multiple purposes. And we just touched on the fact that the Dutch oven is no different. So from your expertise, what are the suggested uses for a Dutch oven?
There's so many different uses for it, but I would say that the main way to use it and the way to get the most out of it is by basically starting to sear your protein. So chicken, beef, meat, short ribs, anything that you want to start developing flavor and you want to cook for longer. So I would start off with browning your meats and then adding in your aromatics. So that would be your onions, your tomatoes, your peppers, garlic, something that's going to help you build flavor in a soup or a stock. And then even with a sauce or even something like a chili. And then from there, you want to fill it with liquid, and either you can cook it completely on the stove, so bring it to a boil and then put the lid on and let it simmer slowly, or you can put it in the oven if you have more time or you don't want to watch it as closely. So I would say that is the biggest use for the cast iron, but at the same not the cast iron, the Dutch oven. I have cast iron in the brain since that's what they're usually made out of. But you could also just use them to boil pasta, or you can use them the way you would any other pot, basically.
Excellent. It made me kind of hungry thinking about all that. Some of with the cold weather we're going through right now, some of those warm sauces and stocks sound really yummy.
But a lot of comfort foods that you could even leave on your counter for a long time, like a chili, and then you just keep going back to it all day.
And just having that, it's like your own personal potpourri in the house that day.
Yes. That's true.
So being that Good Housekeeping Institute is such a respected and great source for information, and you really help consumers find the right piece for Dutch ovens, what would you say are some of the tips or tricks you'd recommend for cooking with them?
So I'm trying to figure out where to start here, because there's a little bit of an experience with cooking aspect that goes into it just so you could really get the best results. But I would start off in general, when you're cooking, you want to get your pan nice and hot. So this way, less food sticks to it. And also, if you're cooking with protein, you're getting a really nice sear on the outside of the meat. So I would start off with getting your pan hot, and especially if you're using a Dutch oven, it's not going to overheat quickly. So it really builds that steady temperature that you're looking for. And then you could either add your oil to the beginning of the process or after your pot has already gotten hot. And that's really depending on what kind of flavor you're looking for. If you're looking for a very gentle sweat on your onions or just gently infusing the garlic, you're going to want to put your oil in the pot before you start heating it. So this way it gets to the temperature slower. So that's one thing that you can control when you're cooking with Dutch ovens. And then other tips would be if you are trying to do a stew, you don't necessarily want to cover all of the ingredients with liquid. If you just get it up 2/3, enough liquid will help it braise without watering it all down. It'll help it get thicker in the end. And then you'd want to use your lid. The Dutch ovens have a lid for a reason, and that really just helps trap the heat and the moisture, so you'll get a really juicy, tender result at the end.
This is really interesting from a product developer's point of view. It's, you hear all this and you think more consumer advice, but it's also product advice.
Mm-hmm.
Because knowing how it's being used is really critical to developing a piece of cookware and making sure that your specs are right and you have all the right fittings and features worked out at the factory. Because a lot of times when you develop a line of cookware, you focus on the fry pans.
Right.
But it has its own specific uses, and you need to make sure that those uses are addressed in the design of the product.
And that's one of my favorite things about what I do. It's not just reviewing products and seeing what stands up to each other, but really doing it in a meaningful way that's going to help consumers, because they want to know, what can I do with this Dutch oven, for example? And I always want someone to not just buy a product, but use it, and not just store it under your counter, but give them the tools to feel empowered to actually make it part of their life. Like, this is why I cook, and I want to be able to share that with as many people as I can, basically.
I agree. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people leave their Dutch oven on the stove because it's kind of that beautiful showpiece that you leave out that matches your kitchen. And now you can really put it to use as a workhorse. Well, I really appreciate this information for both consumers and our retailers listening, because it's great advice. And building a cookware collection at home may mean a variety of types and sizes to create a safe and durable set of tools. And with the information and advice you provided today, now you can see why a Dutch oven is a really important part of any kitchen. Well, Nicole, this has been really awesome. I thank you so much for joining me again today. And I cannot wait for the next one.
Thanks, and talk to you soon.
Yes. Well, that is a wrap for today's recording. You've been listening to What's Cooking with the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Thank you again to Nicole of Good Housekeeping Institute for joining us today. My name is Fran Grosbeck. We're recording this podcast for the Cookware Manufacturers Association. You can find my contact information and more at our website, cookware.org. You will find this podcast and others in the member section of cookware.org website, as well as on iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, Google Play, and many more. At the CMA, we can't say it enough. Our members are our number one priority, and the association is a proven, valuable resource, giving our members access to exclusive engineering standards with a long and trusted industry history since 1922, timely statistical reporting, resources for retailers, and the best members network in the industry. And of course, important information on topics critical to our industry via our podcast like this one. Stay safe, be well, and happy cooking, everyone.